All right, let's get right into it. Think of this as a study guide for a big exam on global trade. And our main case study? It's India. For decades, one of the central promises of globalization was that free trade would be this amazing engine for lifting up developing nations. Well, today, we're opening up the books to answer a really critical question. Did that promise actually deliver for the hundreds of millions of people in India's massive agricultural sector?
So here's our syllabus for this explainer, broken down into 5 parts. We're going to start with the setting, then define our key terms, like any good study session. After that, we'll look at the results, figure out why they happened, and finally, deliver the study's ultimate verdict.
Okay, first things first, we have to set the stage. To really get the impact of a policy change, you've got to know what things were like before. And before 1995, you have to understand that agriculture wasn't just part of India's economy. In a lot of ways, it kind of was the Indian economy. And the scale we're talking about here is just staggering. Before the World Trade Organization even existed, agriculture employed nearly 60% of India's entire workforce. This wasn't some small industry, it was the main source of income for most of the country. So you can imagine, any change to trade policy was going to be a absolutely monumental event. And then everything changed. In 1995, the World Trade Organization, the WTO, was officially established. And with it came something called the Agreement on Agriculture. The whole idea was to create a more open, free market system for farm products around the world. For India, this was a massive, massive test. Which brings us to the big essay question for our study guide. After opening up its farms to the world under these new rules, did India actually win? Did it help, or did it hurt? Let's find out.
Now, to answer that question like a real economist, the way the authors of the source paper did, we need to get familiar with their tools. Think of these as the key vocabulary words you'd need to know for the exam.
First up is a term called net terms of trade, or NTT for short. Now, it sounds a little complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple and super important. It's basically a score that tells you how the prices of the stuff you sell to the world compare to the prices of the stuff you buy from them. And here it is, the official equation. Now, don't let the mouth scare you. The basic idea is just comparing the value of your exports to the value of your imports. If your score is over 100, that's generally a good thing. If it's below 100, well, not so much. Okay, let's break that down for our study notes with a simple analogy. Just think of net terms of trade as a country's trading power. If your NTT is high, it means the goods you sell to the world, your exports, can buy a whole lot of the goods you need from the world, your imports. Simple as that. Our second key term is specialization in agricultural trade. This one's a lot more straightforward, thankfully. It's just a way to figure out if a country, on balance, is selling more farm products to the world than it's buying, or if it's the other way around. And there's the formula for that. All it does is compare the value of your exports to the total value of all your trade. That's exports plus imports. If you get a positive number, it means you're a net exporter. Easy enough, right? Okay, our toolkit is assembled. Let's get to the results. All right, we've got the background, we've got our key terms down. Now for the moment of truth. Let's pull out the scorecard from the study and see how India actually performed in the post-WTO world. So, back to our big test question, did this new era of open markets lead to a huge boom for India's farmers? Did their exports just take off like everyone hoped they would? Wow. Okay, this table tells a really stark story. Before the WTO, India's farm exports were growing at a pretty healthy 8.3% a year. But after the WTO, that growth rate was slashed by more than half, all the way down to 3.8%. Now, look at the other side of the coin. Imports went from growing at 8% to just exploding at almost 14% a year. So the first grade on our scorecard is in, and, well, it's not a good one. Instead of the boom everyone expected, India's agricultural exports slowed way down, while imports from other countries just flooded in. And remember that key term, net terms of trade, that trading power idea? This chart is just devastating. Before the WTO, India had a strong NTT of over 120. After joining, it completely collapsed to just under 65. So what does that mean? It means the value of what India was selling to the world plummeted compared to the cost of what it was buying, a huge loss in trading power. So we've seen the what, a pretty sharp downturn in trade performance.
But the most important part of any good analysis, the part that gets you the top marks, is understanding the why. What on earth caused these numbers to shift so dramatically?
Well, the source paper points to two main culprits. The first was an internal issue, a slowdown in India's own agricultural productivity. But the second factor was external. And frankly, it's a huge piece of this puzzle, the policies of wealthy, developed countries.
And a direct quote from the study really gets to the heart of the matter. It points out that while the WTO was out there pushing free trade, a lot of developed countries were just pouring massive subsidies into their own farms and putting up high tariff walls to block imports. This completely distorted the global market.
Let's put that in plain English. It wasn't a fair fight, not even close. You had Indian farmers, many of them running very small operations, being asked to compete against huge agricultural corporations in the US and Europe that were getting massive amounts of government support. The free market wasn't exactly free.
Okay, we've looked at the evidence, we've analyzed the causes. It's time to close our study guide and deliver the final verdict from the source paper. What was the ultimate grade for the WTO's agreement on agriculture after its first decade in action?
The conclusion is crystal clear. The study finds that for India, the agreement on agriculture just didn't work as advertised. It completely failed to expand the country's net agricultural trade. In fact, based on all the data we just looked at, things actually got significantly worse.
And that leaves us with one final, really big question, one that goes way beyond just this one case study. It really makes you wonder, can a single set of global rules ever create a truly level playing field when the teams starting the game have such fundamentally different levels of power and resources?